Yemen may be taking a major step toward peace as civil war grips the country. Iran-backed Houthi rebels say they've started withdrawing forces from key port cities, 3 of them, including Hodeida, a crucial lifeline for food and medicine. The move is part of a UN peace deal between the rebels and the Saudi-backed Yemeni government. The hope is to end the 4-year civil war, which has triggered the world's worst humanitarian crisis. For more on this now, we want to bring in Sune Rasmussen. He's a Middle East correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, and he's with me now from Beirut. But let us talk about this UN peace deal. This UN peace deal is supposed to be implemented in January. It was supposed to be, however, we're learning now that troops are finally starting to leave these port cities. Is Yemen on track to finally end this civil war?
Well, it's going to be a very long process, and this is a very first initial step towards a longer peace process. This peace deal that was agreed upon in December in Sweden only encompasses Hodeida and these 2 other ports, Salif and Ras Issa, that are now being vacated by the Houthis. But it is true that the UN says that this is an important step because the peace process has stalled for so long. The government, on the other hand, the Saudi-backed Yemeni government, says that the Houthis are only, what they're doing now is a ploy to make it seem like they're withdrawing, but actually they're handing over control to local Coast Guard, which is true, but the government says that Coast Guard is basically Houthi militants or allied with Houthi militants, so it's not a real withdrawal, is what they're claiming.
Okay, so let's talk about Hodeida, and why this port city is so important. The Houthis are pulling out. How could this move be a turning point?
It could, because handing over the control to the UN, we should say that this peace process also obligates the government to withdraw from Hodeida as well, and or pull their forces away from the area, and then leave it in the hands of the UN to sort of monitor the area. And if that happens, that would allow for humanitarian aid and food to enter Yemen from that port, which is the most important port in the country outside of Aden in the south. So it would be a big benefit for the civilians in the area.
So I guess my big question that would make me feel more hopeful about the possibility of ending this civil war is, what are the Houthi rebels hoping for? They're a fiercely independent group, but at this point it almost seems like they're just sort of fighting for the sake of fighting. I don't know if they would have gained anything out of this battle. So what would an end to this civil war look like for them?
Well, the Houthis currently have the capital in Sana'a, so in that sense they do have something to fight for. And the reason that this withdrawal happens now, at least according to the government, is that the UN Security Council is meeting and talking about Yemen later this week. So the Houthis want to make good appearances. They're also meeting today in Jordan, the 2 warring parties in talks monitored or brokered by the UN. So what the government says is that the Houthis want to sort of look good or put up some good appearances for those talks. Whether the Houthis are interested in actually de-escalating the war, or the government for that matter, is of course a different question. And the parties are so far from each other at this point that I think what the UN is looking for is some kind of confidence-building measure that actually works. And if they can agree on Hodeida, then hopefully they can agree on something larger for the rest of the country as well. But at this point, there's no trust between the 2 parties at all.
So far, America has been hesitant to be critical of Saudi Arabia's role in the Middle East and role in this particular dispute. What's the U.S. role now, and what is the administration's point of view on perhaps seeing an end to the civil war?
Well, there has been quite a pushback among American lawmakers in Congress, for example. There's been a lot of discussion about U.S. support for the Saudi and the Emirati war effort in Yemen. But the Trump administration seems pretty bent on pushing back against Iranian influence in the Middle East wherever it can find it. And the Houthis are to some extent supported by Iran, to which extent is debatable, but it is an ally of Iran, and the Houthis are fighting with Iranian support against the Saudis. And I think countering that influence from Iran takes precedence for the U.S. administration. So even though there is some pushback among other American politicians, the Trump administration will probably stick to this plan of pushing back against Iran for as long as it can.
Well, for the sake of the Yemeni people who have found themselves caught in the middle of this entire thing, a humanitarian crisis that is essentially completely man-made, let us hope that these two sides can come to some sort of agreement. At least now, hopefully there's a temporary reprieve and the people there can get the assistance that they need. Sune Rasmussen, thank you.
You're welcome, Emery.